crime is with us for since the is an intrinsic part of the human drama. It's an intrinsic part of every era. It's the story of power. It's the story of politics. It's uh, so you know it's a topic that everybody has opinions on.
Welcome to Why Not Both, the podcast all about how our multiple passions shape our identity and our lives. I'm your host, Pam Schaefer, and our producer is Laura Studeris. This season, we are brought to you by Under the Radar magazine. If you like what you hear, you can head over to our Patreon to support us directly and get transcripts of all of our episodes. Or you can come hang out with us on your favorite social media platforms, where we can be found under WNB the podcast. For this episode, we spent time with the multi-talented, multi-hyphenates, Harper Simon and Julia Holter. I hope you enjoy our chat. This is my first collaboration episode. It's my first remix episode with two people.
Oh, yeah.
This one is?
Yeah.
Oh.
Welcome to Why Not Both, the remix era. This is so exciting.
It's cool.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So usually I don't prepare questions. I just will listen and take in the art that people are making and then chat with them about what's going on in their lives, because that is the spirit of Why Not Both, is that we're not just the one thing that we do. It's all the multifaceted stuff. So I'm like, how are you both? What have you both been up to?
Julia, you go first.
I'm fine. I've been working on some projects, and I've spent the last year doing a little bit of teaching, and in some cases kind of more like conventional songwriting, and then a little bit of weird stuff I did this residency. I lead a workshop with this program called Camp, and this in the Pyrenees in France. That was something I just got back from, and doing these. It's called Camp. It's a relatively new program. It's really cool and really fun. And all these artists come and you do weird stuff together.
I was please tell me more about that.
Vocal improvisations and just basically the point is just getting feeling creative and making stuff, but I focus on the words and wordlessness, using words but also not using words, and nonsense syllables and all kinds of fun stuff.
To get people to write melodies, vocal melodies?
Yeah, I mean, people do write melodies. Yeah, but
or just to free them up.
Yeah, it's a lot about It's a lot about freeing them up, and it's very fun, and it's not conventional teaching. It's very interactive, and they present stuff. There, a lot of them are pretty active artists and stuff, so they're not so they contribue a lot to it too, and yeah, it was really fun.
I would be so shy and self-conscious at that camp.
This was that. Yeah, I know.
I just don't know how I would even function in the camp.
There were people that didn't even. It's called camp, but it's really just a bunch of weirdos in a room, in this kind of really tiny little village where there's not a lot besides mountains, but it was there were people there that didn't sing, that would make stuff with speaking, or wouldn't sing at all and would write music for other people to sing, or there was one of my favorites was two of the students, or two of the workshop participants, did this thing where they just spoke for 30 minutes. They just recorded themselves speaking in nonsense, to each other, like making up a language that didn't even mean anything for like 30 minutes. And they even like put in like the like piped in bar. It's supposed to be in a bar, so they created a fake bar atmosphere, and they like piped in music.
Atmosphere.
Yeah, so it was like this whole invented thing, but they're speaking in nonsense for like 30 minutes to each other.
Did any patterns
It was
emerge
really
in the
cool.
nonsense? Like, did they start forming? Was it like all through intonation? That's fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. No words. Yeah. So stuff like that. They're real
That sounds
like
hard.
they're no, but I
I
know it does sound hard, but it was also really funny, mostly. Dara and Haley, those are their names. I'm crediting them.
I was like, did Dara and Haley start doing this spontaneously, or were they like, okay, 30 minutes,
No, they
nonsense,
planned it.
go?
Yeah. It was like a plan.
Oh, wow.
But did they also plan? Did they have any of this fake language sort of mapped out?
No.
Like phonetically?
Mm-mm.
No.
No, it was all about the moment.
And could you read into like? Were you like reading into the psychology of like? Were you like getting some flirtation or aggression or like the intonations out of their nonsense? Were you like
it was mostly
into it?
Yeah, there was definitely like things you could read into it, like moments of like understanding, and then moments of like maybe that both of them are kind of diverging. There's gonna be I wonder if it's going to be a part of it. If it's not a part of this one radio show, I might try to make a radio show of all the work. But there's going to be a radio show on the 25th next week that might play that piece. Anyway,
what radio show?
So it's let me. I will just announce it because I want them to get credit for their awesome art. It's so my class is called Words and Non-Words. And this radio show will be at http it'll be okay, it'll be at listen.camp, and then it'll be on Mixcloud the next day, mixcloud.com/camp_fr.
This is so exciting.
I highly recommend this. It'll be all the work of these cool artists. Anyway, I'm talking a lot, so
No. I mean, and also, anyway, what a pleasure to go to France. And how long were you there?
Yeah, it was just a real condensed. It's like 5 days. I was actually there for 2 weeks because my partner also was doing one. So we brought our 2-year-old and just were like in the mountains with like a toddler. And
oh my god, I didn't even know. Congratulations. I didn't even
know
yeah,
thank you.
I haven't seen you since before the pandemic.
I know, it's so crazy.
It's like you had a pandemic baby.
It's been a while. I know.
Wow. I was just like, a plot twist in the form of a tiny human.
Oh yeah. So in the midst of all that fun stuff, I was not getting any sleep because she had like crazy jet lag.
Oh.
And Tashi and my partner and I were like tossing her back and forth, but it was fun too, like running around in nature with her.
Oh,
yeah.
And I was like, what a perfect model of I was thinking of the word glossolalia, where it's yeah. I was like,
what does that word mean?
It's essentially what Julia was just teaching, which is like fascinating. That I was like, wait, that's so exciting.
It's like I think it's like the phenomenon of apparently speaking in an unknown language, especially in religious worship.
So it's like trying to read Finnegan's
Wake. So a little like speaking in tongues.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Yeah.
And that it like acquires the meaning because of the setting that you're in, and it can sometimes phonetically sound like language, but it's not necessarily language.
And did there like nonsense dialogue like sometimes like drift into like sounding like slightly racist? like
Oh, you mean
like just by accident?
you mean like taking on accents or
Yeah.
something? Oh yeah, yeah.
Mm.
That's a good question. I didn't notice that. But I didn't notice it myself, but
That can happen. Like my sister and I, when we were kids, would sometimes like, I don't know if you did this with your siblings or with other kids, where you'd like make each other laugh by almost like speaking nonsense to each other. But then my sisters would always drift to this very particular accent. And I remember teasing her that I'm like, oh, you're in the land of foreign. Because it wasn't like an
right.
identifiable accent, but it definitely was
Totally.
like,
Totally.
it would always end up there.
It's definitely very interesting to because there was this thing we were doing. A lot of people were English. There were it was like English and then European. I don't know, but there was definitely this thing where we were like practicing how to speak. Like they were trying to say things in an LA person would say. So I was like telling them how to say like you take like the 405 with the 10 and then
Right.
like
Did you have
teaching like
a little Valley Girl intonation?
English people this is really fun. And then they were teaching us how to say certain things. It was really fun. I don't that's
Yes.
kind of related. I don't know. It's totally related.
Well, it's related, like thinking about how we convey meaning through language, but also through
Yeah.
intonation and like, I mean, I'm from the Valley, so I don't know how to unlike my speech. Basically,
Yeah,
like my
same.
speech patterns are just peppered with
I know.
with likes.
Yeah, I think that's all over the English-speaking world. Don't you? I don't think it's a California thing.
Yeah, at this point maybe
At
a
this point,
generational
yeah.
thing maybe.
Is it generational?
Maybe.
Do you think like? I mean, it was certainly in my generation, and I don't. I wonder. It's a good question when people started saying like.
Mhm.
I remember mimicking my
I feel like
cousin
it's
when I
like
was a
happened
kid.
in the '70s or something. I don't. I feel it, but.
Mhm.
Did you find where they're almost like I was thinking about words like or what or things that get interjected in that 30 minutes. I was wondering, I'm so curious to listen to this. I was just like, if there were little interjections that started appearing.
Um yeah, definitely. Yeah, they had versions of that. Uh-huh. They had a version of I mean, I don't remember what it was, but I could pull it up.
Were there like other facilitators? Like were you taking workshops too or what was happening?
So it's this organization called Camp, and the website's camp.fr if you're curious. Basically, no, I was there to run the workshop, and then Tashi was running a workshop on tuning, like in music, which was really cool too. It was like, so yeah, I was just, it's basically people sign up for these like workshops. So they always get great people too. I don't know how, but I've done
That's
2
awesome.
online ones in the past, and this is my first in person.
I want to go.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
should.
I was
That would
like,
be
take
cool.
me.
Let's do it. Camp.fr.
I'm thinking about the relation of words and not words essentially. Like when you're writing melodies and this I guess for either of you, like do the words or the melodies come first or do they inform each other? Or does it kind of just depend on circumstance?
I feel like I'm talking a lot, so Harper.
Oh, sorry. What was the question? I was distracted because I was actually thinking about how interesting Julia's delivery, vocal deliveries, and her kind of use of how she plays with intonations and words, and her vocal style is very sort of elastic and unusual. Anyway, I was distracted in
Oh,
my head by
That's a
thinking about that.
that's a good distraction.
Coming out of the discussion on nonsense syllables and whatnot.
cool. I could
What
respond to both of those.
Yeah, and then
Or
I'm
what?
super curious to
Good.
hear what Harper hears in your vocals cuz like when you two collaborated
Mm.
together I was like, "Oh, that like making tiny plotting hands because I'm curious what you heard, Harper.
Hmm.
Well, no, I I just think that Julia is very inventive and free with how she delivers, how she might stretch words or deliver a word or deliver a line, while I tend to be, or many other singers tend to be, more sort of straightforward in their reading of words and lines. You know, they sort of give it to you either in a kind of a straight colloquial way, or in a way that sort of sounds vaguely cool or stonery, or I don't know, any number of different kinds of ways. But Julia has a very sort of distinct, original way of playing with words, where I feel like I would never be so free with that kind of delivery myself, but just because I'm just shy or wouldn't think to do it.
Well, I have a question about that because I can talk forever about all that stuff and I will, but on my experience with it. I guess I'm just curious, Harper, like when you write vocals, like do you write the words first or is it just all over the place?
It's a little all over the place. I think I tend to come up with melodic lines, and then I sort of fill them up with scratch lyrics sort of first, you know.
Same.
You do the same?
I'm the same way, mostly, yeah. So
And
I
fill
just
them
was
up sort of with
curious.
scratch lyrics, and I'm like, well, that just gives me the way rhythmically this is going to sort of bounce along, and I'll go back and try to come up with an interesting line later, and or see where the meaning is going to sort of, how it's going to unveil itself, and maybe if there's some meaning or narrative that sort of starts to present itself, then I'll let that direct me.
Same.
Although I'll say, although I find that also very difficult at times to do, um, because then you're kind of trapped into some kind of given meter or something, and then I'm like trying to fill up. I guess, I guess there's a famous example of that people always talk about is like Paul McCartney doing scrambled eggs, was yesterday. I don't know if you know that what I'm talking
Oh
about.
no, is that what he did? I should have brought
The
that in
song
before.
"Yesterday," when he wrote it, his scratch was scrambled eggs.
Wow.
Yeah. But
That's phenomenal.
I mean, it's phenomenal that he could take scrambled eggs and turn it into yesterday. I mean, anyway, I come up with scrambled eggs and then it just like turns into something really idiotic. You know what I mean?
I would just listen to scrambled eggs, quite frankly.
I would
Yeah, I would have stuck with scrambled eggs.
I would have stuck with that, honestly. I'm the same. I'd stay with that theme.
But now I've found recently, I mean, sometimes if I come up with some lyrics, it's easier to have them, and then if you have some words, you can just start to like throw them out over any kind of structure or something, and at least you have like. Sometimes now I'm trying to go the other way, where I have some words first. So I don't know. I guess yes, all over the place would be the answer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to know Julia's approach, really, because actually her lyrics are very unusual.
I think it's really cool to start with words first for me because it's really hard. I don't do it very much. In fact, maybe only like a couple times. I can't. Yeah, it's really hard. But I
Because
mean,
then you kind of, but if you try to do that first, then you maybe have it may be easier to get your intention out in the song. Because you may have something to say or something specific you want to write about or say, and if you say that out in lyrics, at least you're starting with the intention as opposed to just trying to turn scrambled eggs into yesterday.
Right. I guess I don't know if I usually start with an intention. I think I feel things. I have feelings and I have like sometimes like sensory things and I have like a musical like thing I want to have happen. But I know I rarely, this is just for me, obviously other people are different. Like I rarely can even go there. I don't have the ability to like think about an intention like lyric like meaning wise. It's hard. I mean, I maybe I have in the past, but I can't think of I can't think of it. Like
Because you don't start out with say, you know, like, okay, I want to write a song about X.
yeah, like I have had like assignments, I guess. But like I don't think the song that we worked on, like I don't think I started with the idea of Eloise. I don't remember, but I don't think so.
Well, you must have. I mean, you must have had an idea to use that relationship.
I did. I think I started with just the music. I don't, it could have been though that I did have the idea, but I think mostly I started with the music and was playing along with the track you had sent already because there was something I was working off of that Harper sent me. And then I just started singing a melody and then, but I maybe I like came up, I don't know. Actually, I have a feeling I didn't though. I
Does
don't
it
know.
sometimes surprise you, like
I
what
mean,
comes up?
anyway, I mean,
Maybe I did actually. Maybe I did pull the book out. I pulled the book out and then I was like making text first. That's wow. I don't know.
right. So an inspiration, you had a direction,
Hmm.
but you didn't necessarily have a specific thing you wanted to say about that particular relationship, or
Yeah,
did you?
I don't think so. Well, I was exploring the topic, I guess, but
What was the relationship that like was kind of the flashpoint there? It sounds almost like it was a trailhead, but then it surprised you where everything went.
like at what moment?
Well, or maybe she's talking about what. Well, you could just maybe you could give the listeners what we're
Yeah,
talking about.
yeah. So, the song is oh my God, what is our song called? Eloise. Sorry. Okay. So there's these two. So a lot of people know about this story, but there's this Eloise was in the Middle Ages. Well, Abelard was like a well-known professor, I think philosopher, um, and he had an affair with this teenager. I'm sure he was much older. Eloise, who was like his student, and she basically like she got pregnant, and then they had this affair, but then he didn't want to marry her because it would ruin his career, and like they have these like letters between each other where you see like their relationship, but also sort of like the relationship they're trying or the way they're trying to present themselves and like the way he's trying to present himself and you see these like layers in the letters and um anyway, I guess I thought about it related to because Harper had this crime theme.
Yeah, for your listeners, the project we're talking about is called Meditations on Crime, and it's a book and an album that I put together with a lot of different collaborators, and there's an art book with essays, and then there's an accompanying album where I did co-writes with different artists who sing. I don't sing, and I co-wrote in different ways with different. So it's all guests, and it's like a curated project, and it's called Meditations on Crime. I mean, it had a really just a kind of a vague umbrella that contributors could bring to it what they wanted to address, as long as it addressed in quotes crime in some way. But I mean, it runs the gamut. It went from their essays on war crimes and to to Julia's song about this relationship that's from many centuries ago. So anyway, that's the project that we're discussing.
Yeah.
Totally.
But sorry, I don't know what you were.
No, it's good. It's good. I think it's good to have that overview because I thought of this I thought of their Heloise and Abelard just because of the idea of them having this like
illicit
affair. Yeah.
What
were you say?
I was like, how did the affair end?
That's a good question.
He just like left or she was alone and she had to become a nun and it's not good. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought so I was confused too because I thought maybe she was already in. She was maybe not already a nun, but I thought she was already. I thought partly what made their relationship illicit was that she was maybe in a convent or maybe there was a religious dimension to this where she had sort of stepped outside the bounds of her calling.
I think I think that's true. I think she became a nun as a result. Like she had to become a nun for her like reputation because she had this illicit affair. I think that's my understanding. Basically like I think oh yeah, also Abelard was castrated or he was castrated. So that's
This
not
is a
great.
big piece of information. We could have put this in the song, Julia.
Oh my God! Can there be a sequel? Can there be a sequel song?
Yeah, basically. Okay, so they were gonna get married, and then and like Abelard didn't want to get married because it would ruin his reputation, and then she like I don't know. I think I don't know if it's like her father had Abelard castrated, and then Abelard became a monk, so he had been like I guess professor like and like philosopher. Abelard became a monk, and then
He was like, "Damn, I really should have married her."
and then she became a nun, so she had to go into the convent.
Wow.
Because she didn't have a lot of options, and because they had this child. Yeah, this is in the 12th century in France, and yeah.
Now I'm wondering what happened to the child. Like that
I was
that
wondering
lineage
that
Her
must have
child,
continued.
her child was named Astrolabe or Astrolabe, um, which means like some kind of ancient instrument for astrological stuff. Astronomical, yeah, it's an instrument to model the universe.
Yep. I was like, I'm gonna look up the exact definition of that because I love that word.
I can't remember. I think that he disappeared or something. I don't know. Let me see. I'm reading. Let's see. He kind of
Yeah, it's
he's recorded as dying around this time of year, 29th or 30th of October. But basically, I think he was just raised by someone else.
Did he have any known descendants? I'm curious because I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, what are we doing now that in hundreds of years people are going to be like, okay, so then this person got castrated, but then that person I'm like when these people were leading their lives, were they like, all right, someone is going to be writing a song about this later?
Yeah, probably not.
It's like I'm so curious what's happening now that in retrospect people are going to be gaining artistic inspiration.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
And when you were thinking about the criminal dimension to this situation, were you thinking about his abandonment of her?
No, I was thinking about them in society have their affair being a crime, I guess.
You were thinking about sort of how they were frowned upon, or
I was thinking
the
about
judgment against their love.
I was thinking about how because they had this affair, it like destroyed their lives, and how that was like how they could, like, they had to, like, be castrated
Yeah,
and, like,
but I'm confused. I thought it was because she was in the convent, and now you're saying it's just because she was young and
wait,
he was her
oh,
professor. I thought she was. I thought she was like a nun who had a like naughty affair, with
yeah,
the, and that then she had sort of whatever offended the church or offended God, or and then was and then was judged or made a pariah or cast out of the convent or something. I was confused.
right.
I didn't
Well,
think.
it's something that it's confusing, but I think basically,
But then she went on to become this sort of formidable intellectual, though. Is that also correct?
maybe, I mean, she was a nun. Yeah, I think
Or did
she
their
was.
letters become famous?
Yeah, their letters are famous. You
Yeah.
can read them. Also, I mean, there also is crime in that apparently it's like he was a lot older than her, and there's some question about like consensual, non-consensual
Right.
sex in their relationship, which of course I could imagine as she was like a teenager and he was older. I don't know, but and the times, the time period. But yeah, so there's
But their
that element
letters
too.
are their letters are not accusatory in that way. I mean, their letters they have a connection.
They had a connection too. Yeah, it's complicated.
I was just like, you can have a connection within an imbalanced power dynamic.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Way or the other. I also am not an expert on this. I just, always learning more.
It was a springboard for the song anyway. So
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about even the definition of crime. Like, there are so many layers of potential criminality in that, in violation of like, even it's fascinating to me that instead of marrying her, like his worry about maybe losing status, I'm like, bro, you got castrated instead. Like, was that
yeah, I
really
was thinking
better?
the same thing. Boy, did he
I
make a
know.
mistake.
Yeah, that
Um,
sucks.
I'm sure. Yeah, I feel that he has more regrets about this situation than her. I'm just
He
going
was
out on a limb
he
here.
was worried about marrying her, and I don't totally like. There's some societal reason. It had something to do with maybe he was supposed to be celibate. I can't. I don't.
Mm.
Oh, she was of a lower social standing. Um, Someone will listen to this and be an expert on Eloise and Abelard and will tell us. But
I'm gonna have to run it by my friend. My friend Dana Schwartz does the podcast Noble Blood, where she researches like the scandals of uh, dead monarchy people. That was a terrible description. I should
Yeah,
never do her marketing.
monarchs. Okay.
Occasionally, I'm either the most articulate person or I'm like, we were at the thing, the place with all the old stuff, and my friend's like the flea market. And I'm like, yeah. Like, you get one or the other. But she loves researching stuff like this. I was like, oh, I will definitely run this one by her. To be like, have you researched this one? Have you gone down this rabbit hole? Because yeah, like even thinking about the name, like Meditations on a Crime, it was interesting. I was reading the essays in it and looking at the art, listening to the music. I was taking in all of it, and it did kind of elicit in me, at least, the feeling of like, what is crime? It's so broad, and even talking about this, I'm like, oh, there's so many ways to interpret the criminality even within that one story. So I was like, what a jumping off point. Like, I guess, Harper, what inspired you initially to even investigate the topic of that?
What inspired me was it came out of it came out of truthfully it sort of came out of the 2016 election. um, I thought after that the new administration came in at that time that I felt it was I wanted to do something that was political in nature. I wanted to do some kind of creative project that was political, but
Mm-hmm.
I was somewhat bewildered as to how to approach that.
Mm.
Um, as I felt a lot of the culture um, was somewhat stumped on how to come up with political content that doesn't feel trite or, like hitting you over the head with an agenda, and the same kind of agenda that maybe you hear in an endless echo chamber in the media and on the internet. And now when everybody has a voice on social media, it's not like the power of like a protest song or something. It's not maybe it's not the same as it was maybe during the civil rights era, and so many things have been said, whether it's through protest songs from that era, through punk rock, or it's just a lot has been. I could not figure out how to write. I did not want to sing and write a bunch of sort of political protest songs, but I wanted to do. Like I just would not know how to do that and pull that off, really. And but I wanted to do something that was political in nature, and I also wanted to do something that was. I don't know. I thought maybe if I did a series of collaborations and co-writes with people, where I could co-write but kind of be a bit more behind the scenes and not be out in front, and that it would be a good. I was looking for an excuse to do collaborations or just do some co-writes with various songwriters that I liked or admired, or my friends, or just see where it led me. And then I thought, oh, this should have a book, and I could tap into various writers. I knew writers and journalists and other artists, and then so it just kept sort of fanning out. Anyway, but sorry to get back to you. So anyway, I was not sure on how to sort of approach the idea of coming up with political content, but uh, I had a few different titles, and I had this one title, Meditations on Crime, and I ran that by my friend, an artist, Jonah Freeman, and he liked the title, and his encouragement sort of he encouraged me, and then I committed to the title. And the thing that I liked about that was that I felt that there was an obvious political dimension to crime, and a historical dimension that was political in nature, but it's open enough that it could let the various participants and contributors in the project to sort of, it could go other places that weren't intrinsically political. Mm-hmm. It could become more philosophical. It could talk about any number of things. It didn't have to be, it went all the way back to the story from the 12th century. It didn't have to be about, railing against the Trump administration or something, or talking about, I don't know, more obvious sort of kinds of crimes in the culture. So I felt like crime sort of inherently had everything in there, and basically there's the story of crime is the story of the unfolding of human drama. And so, once I sort of had that title and sort of had this sort of mission statement in there, I sort of let people sort of contribute what they want. And what I liked about it is actually, as it kept being more contributors coming in, it became more abstract and more philosophical and more curious, really, and less political, although there actually is quite a lot of political content in there as well.
That's fascinating. How, I guess, like, now that you've created that, did it change the way that you conceptualized kind of your own work? Like, if that was something you always wanted to do, to collaborate like that?
Yeah, I did like doing it. I mean, I liked the book was my friend Jonah Freeman. He came on. I had a few of the artists. I had Cindy Sherman, and I had Tracy Emin, and I had a few artists, but I needed more. And I just know some artists are my friends, or I know them socially, but I'm not really in the art world. So I needed Jonah to to bring in more artists. So he sort of came on board to co-curate the art portion of the book, and then I commissioned the essays, and then but I didn't collaborate on that. I mean, the art is, just images people wanted to give, mostly from their body of work. There are some original images, but most of them are licensed images. But the essays were all original. But I just sort of chose the writers, and but the album was an original. It was all collaborations. It was all. No, I really liked it because I'm quite shy about. I don't know. I've never been so comfortable being out in the center of the spotlight, and I like carrying things myself. So I did like to. I did like that. I liked the collaboration, and I liked to work with different vocalists and songwriters for sure.
And that role, that person that's not in the spotlight, that's a critical role too. I think that people underestimate the value of like the curator and the collaborator and the person that facilitates all of that.
Well, I'm all over the project, anyway. You know what I mean? I didn't need to be out there. It was fine. I mean, I co-write on every song. I edited, and then I ended up writing my own essay for it. In the end, I went to the Ukrainian border. I went to Poland, and I went there and helped transport medical aid and tactical gear to the border of Ukraine at the start of the war, and then I wrote a piece on that, and that got published in Spin, and then I put it in the book.
Oh, wow.
So I'm all over the project anyway, even if I'm not actually singing on it, singing a lead vocal on it. So
Well,
yeah, I'm
you're-
very happy with that. I'm happy with that role for sure.
I was curious how it was impacting you personally now, like having gone through that experience and the fact that even, it seems like the genesis of this was the 2016 election, but as we've continued in our trajectory through time space, things feel, at least to me, like they've only gotten more chaotic and potentially criminal. And then having an experience like that, going to like the border in an active war conflict, I was like, is that impacting you and what you're doing now, either in that sphere, like in the activism sphere, like very tangibly, or in the artistic sphere?
Gee, that's a good question. Yeah, so the funny thing is, even though the genesis of this sort of came out of me feeling compelled to do something that was a bit more political than I would usually do because of the 2016 election, then because this project kept adding more and more contributors and more stuff, and it took a long time to accumulate, and then COVID hit, and then the project sort of sat on the shelf for another couple of years, and by the time it got over the finish line, the the Trump administration was out. But it doesn't really matter because all of those characters are still very much in play, and in a way, you're right. The world seems to have become more, or at least there's more of a magnifying glass on the criminal nature of things today. I mean, it's really kind of all we think about and talk about a lot in the political realm, but maybe it always has been. I mean, in a way, to talk about crime is such a it's not topical. I mean, crime is with us is an intrinsic part of the human drama. It's an intrinsic part of every era. It's the story of power. It's the story of politics. So it's a topic that everybody has opinions on, and it's so big and abstract, and it. But that's what I like about it, and it was just interesting to see so many different contributors come in with these different points of view on it, because it really there was just like all sorts of interesting artistic sort of angles on it. And it could go on forever. I mean, it's almost an absurd title or an absurd topic. It's just too big. It's not like you can nail it, you know.
Well, yeah, it's fascinating to even think about like that we just went kind of like, okay, this is into the future, and Julia, yours went into the past, and that they can dovetail together.
So true. And also, I'll say this also, another note I was thinking, uh, I also thought in terms of musical, when I was thinking in terms of the musical collaborations, I also thought, actually, it seems to me that probably love songs are probably the most dominant mode of songwriting in history, probably. But probably second to that would be songs having to do with crime. I mean, there's also hymns and spiritual songs that maybe fall into another category. But, other than love songs, I'd say the other dominant mode of songwriting usually has to do with some kind of crime or injustice. Um, Whether it could be anything, just folk songs, murder ballads, protest songs, songs about social injustice. Um, it seems to me that it's just such a big broad category for songwriting that I felt like, well, it's just it just works for songs somehow.
Yeah, you'd said that feeling of injustice, like that really resonated. That it feels like the things that we really like to write about universally are either like, yay, it happened, or no, it didn't happen, and wow, am I mad about it for these reasons. Those are two pretty big universal feelings. I was like, I can get behind that.
Hey Julia, do you feel like when you write in your songwriting that would you say that the dominant subject matter is personal relationships, like romantic relationships, like love songs in some way?
I would say not, actually. I mean, I think that the way I always think about personal stuff in my work, and maybe the way I think about a lot of art, not just my own, is that like the personal is sort of like there already. And it's not like necessarily I'm writing about something explicitly when I'm starting. It's sort of like there. Everything like that I'm experiencing as a human is in work that I make, but I don't usually come to it with a specific, like I said, intention before,
Mm-hmm.
like or you'd said that word.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, I think I often don't have like a clear intention. I'm following something. So it's sort of like, I'll make a sound and then I'll follow the sound and see where it takes me, which is sort of reminds me of how you were describing your process, Harper, when you're like writing lyrics. So
You
it's
let
like,
it reveal itself to you.
yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
And it's not like all my songs are just totally stream of consciousness, like nonsense. Like there definitely emerges meaning in various ways, whether it's sonic meaning or like actual meaning with language. It's always like a mix of both. So I'm like there for the sounds. I'm working with the sounds and trying to get the sounds um, to do the. I'm trying to see what the sounds are doing, and then there's
Right.
like some meaning emerges out of
Hmm.
it. I mean, generally that's true. I would say for me, but I think um, I kind of like there. Remember, there's something Harper mentioned earlier about the way that I sing things,
Yeah.
which I thought relates to that discussion. Like, I think that there's a way I sing things which is like focused on the sound of the words, but is not like I'm not like a professionally trained vocalist. And I did take vocal lessons
I'm
once.
surprised. I mean, you
And
could have fooled me. But anyway, go on.
I mean, I took vocal lessons once, and the guy was like, he was great, but he was trying to get me to like be able to sing certain pitches with the same syllable as like and other pitches. And the way that I basically I was it was revealed that I cheat as a singer. So like I mold the shape of my voice, my mouth to fit certain pitches so I can sing them, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to sing them very well. Which if you're like a professional singer, like trying to project and be like really do something grand, you would you would train your voice to be agile enough to like
Right.
hit all those pitches, like
Yeah.
oh, like singing like ah, like on ah, and then sing on e, and then sing on ooh. But I can only sing ooh on this one pitch, and I can only sing e on this other pitch.
Right.
So I feel like
it's a vocal range thing.
you end up having this like limited palette. Like I end up at least having a limited palette to work with, and I feel like a lot of that dictates the words I choose. I think so. I mean,
it dictates the words you choose.
Probably.
Not only the melodies you choose.
Probably it does. It's real sonic in the end. It's a hypothesis.
Yeah, and maybe, but actually, I think if you probably have quite a larger range than a lot of singers. So I mean, actually, when you said that just now, I thought, oh, but actually, she has her voice is quite free, and she has quite a lot of range, and it kind of can go all over the place, as opposed to. But maybe you're right, because or if you think of singers that maybe have very little range, like. I don't know, like Randy Newman or Bob Dylan or something. You know what I mean? There's no range there. They're kind of spitting out. They're spitting out words at you in a more talky way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's
Right.
not. It's not. There's not big. There's not melodic. There's not a lot of melodic range. I mean, there's some, but it's not like. But maybe you're right. Maybe that kind of serves. Like the vocal style, and maybe in a way that like. Forms the lyrical intent in some way.
Right.
And it sounds like you know your own, like you as your own instrument. You know yourself really well, and you're writing for you as an instrument. And it sounds like that kind of.
Or Lou Reed
Yeah.
It doesn't have range. There's no range there. But it's not. It's not like a judgment. It's whatever. I mean, I love Lou Reed's vocals. I don't need
Totally.
Maria Callas's range. It's
totally.
Well, and if you're using yourself as like the gauge and as the instrument, like that almost frees up what you can write. If you're writing for yourself and you know how it feels in your own body, I was like, then you can. It's not even cheating range. It's like you have your own range. Is what popped into my mind.
Something that's hard for me is singing other people's music sometimes. Not like doing a cover where like, I mean, it kind of is the same thing, but like I'll choose a song to cover and then I'll fit it into my range and whatever. But I also sometimes sing other people's music, and that can be hard, because it's not, I'm not like a classical singer conventionally, but like I just recorded this piece a friend of mine from college wrote years ago for my voice. And originally she wrote this piece for my voice. It's like a composition for string quartet and then voice, and it's all notated. And she wrote this piece for me to sing in college back then, and she was writing it kind of for like a classical singer.
Is this the piece that's on Aviary?
Oh no, this isn't written by me. Aviary is my record that I wrote, but this is a piece by a friend, Alex Temple, and she has this piece behind the wallpaper, and it's like, it was written for me to sing in the string quartet, spectral quartet. Anyway, we just finished recording it. We've been playing it for years, but in it, originally she tried to write this piece for me, and she had written it kind of for a classical singer. And I was like, it sounded terrible because I couldn't sing like that much stuff. You know, it was like really like it wasn't, yeah, it just basically she had to listen to my records to like learn how my voice works, where it works to write the piece. And then she wrote this other piece that fits my voice really nicely because she researched it where I can sing, you know?
Yes. And I would imagine your voice has changed since college.
You didn't classically train as a singer, but did you train as a composer or an instrumentalist? Because there's a lot of, you know, your work is very compositional, and
I was,
yeah.
yeah, I was studying composition. So I studied piano originally, like when I was a kid. I was never very good pianist though. But I studied classical piano for years. But I, again, was not, I was quite like, I loved playing, but I was not very good at it. So I decided I like really wanted to write music. So I started as a composer. Like I didn't sing at all back then, but I would write music for other people to play, basically behind the scenes.
You'd write you'd write like a little class, you know, not classical but or neoclassical piece compositions for strings or piano or for.
Yeah, and this was a quite short period of my life. So this was starting when I was like 17 until 20. And then once I started recording. So I only, yeah, but I would write like string quartet, or I wrote like a large chamber ensemble piece. None of these things I'm singing in, but I did start singing around that time period, and I started recording around that time period, and then my whole like world exploded, and I was like, oh, I love this.
Aww.
I love singing. Actually, I never knew.
Yeah, because I mean, anyway, your records are unusual in that you bring those elements into, you know, what is also maybe considered a, I don't know, you know, like rock and roll, or I don't know, like psychedelic music. You know, you bring you know, a lot of classical arrangement and also sort of, I don't know, experimental avant-garde classical sort of elements into your records. That's very interesting and unusual. I mean, and very musically formidable.
Cool.
It's not just it's
no,
I'm
it's
just stating
cool.
a fact.
I mean, I definitely was out of place in a classical conservatory atmosphere because I didn't listen exclusively to classical music, or like even half as much as a lot of the people who were much more deep in that realm and more educated in that realm. I grew up listening to like pop music mostly. So it's a little, you know, it's confusing for sure. And that's definitely, I'm a real like dilettante with what music I like. And
Do you work with other? What do you write out the arrangements yourself for your records, or do you work with another or with other arrangers?
yeah, I arrange music myself for the most part. I mean, you could sometimes, in the past, sometimes, you know, it's like people have a hand in it. If you're like improvising, there's a certain elements of group arranging that's happening. But and the whole, I mean, I arrange everything myself, and I direct it, and I also choose people that who's playing I'm familiar with usually, but not always. Um, so you know, it's like a lot of there's a lot of dialogue, and I present music to people to play in a lot of different ways. So sometimes it's just oral, like, oh, let's do this, like let's play this one chord, and then it's gonna eventually move to this other chord, and you'll do like a ascending tremolo, like on the bass or like whatever. That's like one song of mine on aviary, or like, and then but like how it happens as a group, it happens because everyone does it over this certain period of time, and the way they do it also impacts everything obviously too. But then I have like other songs where it's like all notated string parts, kind of messily. I'm like real messy. I'm not gonna say I like put all the articulations in always, or like, and I just like.
But then do you have like a musical director type person who then cleans it all up or something, or then communicates it to the ensemble?
Not usually. Um, I mean, I direct them for my records. Yeah.
And who are some of the composers that influenced that aspect of your record making?
Well, that aspect of it, I don't know. I mean, I would imagine there are people that work this way.
Because it sounds like a lot of it. There's a lot of it sounds like I don't know, like modern composers. Like maybe maybe in this, I don't know, Steve Reich or Philip Glass, or I'm not even sure, just modern composition stuff is I hear a lot in there. And then I also hear kind of like more sort of a bit like downtown Laurie Anderson kind of stuff in there as well. I don't know, was that with, or I don't know, Glenn Branca, or was that those people influential to you?
I guess I'll say like a big influence for me in sort of recent years has been Alice Coltrane.
Oh yeah, I love her too.
Because the way that she works with instruments is very inspiring, and harmony and melody as a singer as well. And her string arrangements on records like Universal Consciousness really inspired mine, the ones I have on Aviary. And I'm very open about that. I'm, very, I was really looking for a way to, because I would say my arranging, I've been working on trying to be better at arranging, but it was not always great. Like my earlier records, I feel like I'm really we're digressing, but anyway,
No.
but in my earlier records, I was a little more like pads, kind of string pads,
Yeah.
like just notate out long tone. And I'm trying to think more. I'm trying to push myself I think that comes from being a keyboard player. So kind of playing harmonically, like these kind of homophonic like chords and singing over that, this kind of structure, this texture, this musical texture, which is like very ubiquitous in like contemporary like pop songs, or just not even pop songs, but like a lot of songs. I was trying to push myself to really think more polyphonically, like the lines of the instruments doing different things. And sometimes when I do that, it ends up being much more like heterophonic, which is like each instrument playing sort of a similar thing at the same time, but in different times.
Yes.
Which is different than polyphonic, but I always come back to that because heterophony is like such an appealing texture. But like, I think, yeah, it's sort of a.
And then do you I mean, Alice Coltrane, I mean there's a lot of, I mean it's very improvisational music. I don't think of your music as having, well, I imagine that your vocal layering has a lot of improvisation in it, and then you sort of cull it back. But I don't hear that in the instrumentalists that much, which everything seems really quite composed.
I mean, I don't know what Alice Coltrane's process was. I know that she tends to have these like very distinct, and I mean, she has a lot of different types of recordings, but in the ones I'm talking about, like Universal Consciousness, she tends to have these like clear melodies and I don't know how she got them arranged in this way where like the instruments would be basically playing kind of the same thing at the same time, but kind of not. So it's like this really cool, like these ascending lines, but they're like sort of slightly different from each other. But I mean, everyone writes differently, so I don't know how different my process is than Alice Coltrane's, but I think I'm sure very different. But like, I just was really inspired by the specific way she treats instruments in her music. And yeah, I don't know if it's hard to know how much improvisation or how much I feel like, yeah, it's
I mean, she often has like a stand-up bass and drums. Like jazz guys, they're sort of like just sort of jamming along in the back, and she is improvising on harp. These sort of long and amazing lines and harp, cascading harp, and.
but I mean, she probably, like a lot of people in the jazz realm, would like, at least traditionally you'd start with like charts, which would be composed and have like a harmonic structure and then like a melodic structure. And I wouldn't say it's that different for me. In some ways, in a lot of ways, often I have a chart also. So it's like sometimes a lot of times, like I'll record mock-up solos that I'll make, and then I'll show it to the player. That's another way. And sometimes I'll transcribe those solos for the player so they have them, but then I let them do their own solo. I mean, I don't write out every solo, for example. So like, I don't know how, I mean, it might be different. I know that she also did something where she like rearranged Stravinsky, I don't know, Firebird or something. Yeah, so she did all kinds of stuff where definitely she was controlling a lot of it, you know.
I had a I sort of had my first experience with that kind of thing on this project. Actually, one of the other tracks I did with Marshall Allen and the Sun Ra Orchestra.
Oh yeah, awesome, right.
So I went and recorded with them, and I wrote for them, and that was really one of the very memorable experiences with this record. But with them, I mean, it was hard because I mean, I'm not jazz trained, and I'd never written for jazz players really, much less these illustrious ones from the Sun Ra Orchestra that I grew up listening to. So I was sort of intimidated, and also wasn't sure how they worked. But I ended up, like you said, I would come up with melodic motifs, and and sort of allow them to play these written melodic motifs, which they often didn't really play that tightly as I had written them, but anyway, and then letting them sort of drift into their improvisatory orchestra universe, and then come back to the motifs, like I suppose like a lot of jazz. But that was my first experience really sort of working with that kind of thing outside of like rock and roll players.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was
that process.
I mean, anyway, I would love to do it more. I felt a little bit fraudulent being in there because it's just not my training, but I was proud to have done it by the end because I loved and anyway, it was an amazing time. We went to Philadelphia where they all live.
Oh wow!
They all live in Philadelphia, and some of them still live in this like communal house where Sun Ra lived. They all used to live in this communal house, which is like has all these incredible sort of Afro-futuristic like murals and paintings and like kind of psychedelic stuff all on the walls, and like they all they're Marshall Allen is 98 years old. I mean, they're really like and also it was really special. I mean, I'm digressing now. I don't know if you're actually interested in the story. But,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I was just like, this sounds like you stepped into a time capsule.
I did actually, and it was. And yeah, it was put together. It was my friend Hal Wilner, who I'd known for a lot of years. Hal, he and was somewhat inspired by his work with this project because he was somebody who did a number of albums and performances where he would get a bunch of illustrious songwriters or singers to come together on a kind of. He'd make these sort of compilation albums, but they were thematic. Like he did one called Stay Awake that was on the like all Disney songs, and then he did one that was all Charles Mingus. He did one that was all Nino Rota compositions, but he did many of these over the years, even though his sort of day job was that he did all the sketch music at Saturday Night Live for like 25 years. That's where he sort of worked. But
cool.
He was more
Nice.
what his real love was sort of like jazz and avant-garde stuff and beatnik stuff and like more like fringy rock and roll stuff. Maybe even with like, I mean, he had everybody on there: Tom Waits and Sonic Youth and Harry Nilsson. I mean, he had a million people on his things. Anyway, but he had worked with Sun Ra a lot, so I had asked. He then came on and just co-produced these 2 tracks with me with Sun Ra Orchestra, and he set it up for me, and we drove down to Philadelphia, and like it was really special. And then like we both felt really satisfied at the end of the day. You know, like we had this great day recording, and we went to the Sun Ra house and we hung out with those guys and just talked about jazz and stuff. And then we drove back to New York, and then sadly, like within a year, he died of COVID, actually. So
wow,
it was sort of the last time I sort of got to see him. But it was like such a perfect experience to have with him after knowing him for so long.
Totally.
Anyway, I'm just digressing into other anecdotes from the project, but we could probably talk all day about this stuff.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that story, because I'm sorry for your loss, but also what a beautiful experience to have, and that you have record of that experience.
I'm so grateful to have had it. You know?
Yeah.
And hopefully my plan, what I would really like to do, I hope that I get to throw together some kind of performances. All the different contributors on this project are kind of all over the globe, but I'm hoping to do a couple. I would love to like get the Sun Ra Orchestra to come, and then mix it up with, you know, Julia Holter and Gang Gang Dance and all the different kind of misfits and who came together for this project. That's my dream. I don't know if I can swing it.
Could have
Sounds good.
Could have it in installments. I was just like, oh my gosh.
I'm really just trying to like put
a
little bit of pressure on Julia Holter, like on tape, so she commits to it and can't back out.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Julia caved under the slightest amount of pressure.
I'm down.
Thank you both so much for being so generous with your time and energy to come and chat today.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. I don't get to sit around and talk about crime and Alice Coltrane, you know, all in the same conversation that often, you know. And with the incredibly talented Julia Holter, who I admire so much.
Oh, thank you, Harper. It was really nice to work with you on the project.
Oh.
Well, thanks, guys.
Thank you again for listening to this episode of Why Not Both. If you liked what you heard, please make sure to like us and subscribe to us on your preferred podcast platform. You can also come hang out with us on social media. We are at WNB the podcast, both on Instagram and on Twitter. This season, we are brought to you by Under the Radar magazine. Under the Radar is a nationally distributed print, music, and entertainment magazine and website. You can find them at www.undertheradarmag.com, and feel free to support them on Patreon. Extra special thanks to our producer, Laura Studeris, who is literally a rock star. Thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you next episode.